our holding environment and focusing on, and appropriately so, on the softening, the creating a welcoming, comforting environment of feathering our nest. And while we've mentioned strengthening the holding environment, we haven't really gotten into that, on creating a strong as well as a soft and gentle holding environment and what that means. We focused on creating and maintaining warmth and kindness first, and that makes sense, particularly as a way of counteracting so much of our conditioning that focuses on hard work and striving and stiff upper lipping it. If we started out focusing on strength, we might get caught up in creating a hard and rigid structure, a fortress of steel and concrete. And we're also conditioned to see qualities like kindness, compassion, gentleness as weaknesses that might increase our vulnerability rather than our strength. Certainly, as I was growing up, to be strong not just meant being physically strong, but to be a strong person meant to be unemotional, unresponsive, uncaring. In order not to be vulnerable, it's tempting, based on this conditioning, to create emotional armor, to protect my heart. I'll develop armor around my heart. Nobody can get in there. Nobody can touch it. I'll build walls, emotional walls around me. I'll become detached or numbed out. And I certainly have a lot of practice with that. In the words of Simon and Garfunkel, in a song I used to love singing, I'm a rock, I'm an island, I've built walls, a fortress, steep and mighty, that none may penetrate. And the safer we want to be and the more vulnerable we feel, the more tempted we may be to armor up around our hearts. But this is the process of aversion, not strengthening. It's the understandable proclivity to want to push any pain out and away. But grasping after this desire for invulnerability and the aversion of pushing painful feelings away, of keeping them outside our armored walls, is only the illusion of strength. It only keeps us disconnected from ourselves and from others. What the practice teaches us is adding softness and kindness to strength isn't being vulnerable or increasing our vulnerability, but creating a space in which we can hold that vulnerability as we ground, breathe, calm, settle, soothe. What we've been practicing for all these years together that we've been meeting has been our strength training. The Eightfold Path, the Paramitas, the Brahma Viharas, these are our workouts. We certainly need the strength of wisdom, of discernment, to bring together strength and gentleness. And I found this rather amusing poem that reflects this quite well. Wisdom was listening in one day. She had nothing else to do, as strength and gentleness were debating which was the greater of the two. I'm the greater one, said Strength. I'm a mountain. I'm a tree. Nothing on this planet is more powerful than me. Silly Strength. You flatter yourself, said Gentleness. You're not as important as you think. For gentle is the air we breathe. and the water that we drink. I believe, wisdom interrupted, you're both looking at this wrong. For it often takes strength to be gentle and gentleness to be strong. You can debate who's greater until the end of time, and no solution will you derive. For you're strongest when you act together. You need each other to survive. So how do we bring these two together? As Susan always reminds us, let's apply kindness and wisdom to how we strengthen and take care of the body first, starting with honoring what the body needs. As part of my metta practice, I like to use as one of my phrases, may my body support me with strength. And I've adapted that to strengthening my holding environment. May my body support my holding environment as strongly and as best as it can. Whether sitting, standing, or lying down, I can appreciate the foundation of strength that supports caring attention. Knowing what my body needs in this moment, giving it the support it may need, not pushing it too far. As my yoga teacher always reminds us, pushing into pain or injury is not what we're about here. Engaging and strengthening muscles needed to hold the pose, and noticing what muscles I don't need to engage, that are tightened and can be loosened and softened to strengthen my capacity, my flexibility to stretch and strengthen, and letting my body do that at its own pace and really attending to that. Thanissaro Bhikkhu also reminds us to appreciate where we are. And in his analogy of meditation to weight training says, so even though you may feel scrawny when everyone around you seems bigger and stronger, remember you're not here to compete. Only by exercising what little concentration or metta or wisdom you have will you make it solid and steady. So appreciate what you've got. And don't be impatient. Also, we've practiced cultivating the strength of energy. Not too restless, not too lax, coming into that Goldilocks zone that Bill talks about, right in the middle, that 4 to 6 on a scale of 1 to 10, where our strength is. To cultivate and sustain with our energy, our attention, and develop concentration. And with the strength of commitment, generosity, kindliness, and compassion, we can gradually strengthen our hearts. We can slowly feel safer putting aside the armor around our hearts. As a line in a poem I read recently states, bow to the heart in its current state. Make it safe, safe even to feel unsafe. Trust that when the heart is ready and not a moment before, it will open like a flower in the warmth of the sun. So by creating a gentle, warm, sunshiny place in our holding environment, we're strengthening the conditions that will allow for our hearts to open in their own time. We work the muscle groups of patience with and trust in the practice. with the help and support of metta and karuna, kindliness and compassion. And this is why it's so important to, as Susan would say, to notice and make much of the fruits of our practice, even when we feel scrawny, and especially when we feel scrawny compared to others. To notice our growing strength. We can practice the discernment and balance, the equanimity of cultivating a strong and gentle holding environment, held in not only the kind arms of our holding environment, but the strong and gentle arms of our holding environment, feeling the safety of that strength to be held strongly and lovingly. And I can feel into this space of strong and loving arms as I call up images. One image is being held by my father when I was really scared during a pretty violent, or what seemed like a violent thunderstorm to a 4-year-old, and being held and comforted and feeling safe in my father's arms. Or being held by my mother when she stood up for me when a neighbor boy next door came over and pushed me down. And his mother came out and yelled at me, and my mother, bless her heart, had the courage to stand up for me in that situation. And that feeling of loving strength can warm my heart. This sense of strong gentleness was eloquently expressed in a posting by a woman who is a daughter writing about her father after his death. And here's what she wrote. I believe it takes a strong person to be gentle. There is a benign strength that exists in the tender-hearted. I am forever grateful to have been blessed with a compassionate father figure. However brief our time together was, the lessons and blessings remain infinitely eternal. He was known as our gentle giant. All 6'2" of him was benevolent and kind. Despite living with epilepsy and 4 feisty females, he never once wavered from love and compassion. Dad's inner strength has remained a guiding light for right action in my own life. I don't always get it right, but I certainly do try. Where and when can we practice gentleness in our own lives? One of my favorite quotes by the Dalai Lama states, "Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible." She goes on to say, it takes strength and courage to choose kindness, to be humble when faced with adversity, to consider the needs of others when our own are not being met, and to be vulnerable when our hearts are on the line. But when we are guided by the part of us that is honest, good-natured, and true, we remind others that it is safe to do the same. Today, find the strength to be gentle. May our thoughts be forgiving and merciful. May our words inspire and uplift. And may our actions show compassion and empathy in all circumstances, towards others as well as ourselves. Because nothing is so strong as gentleness. Nothing so gentle as real strength.